hold of you, so I'm glad I got you here on Monday. Lay out what's going on. I've got this thing redlined, almost went through it a whole red flare, just trying to underline all the important stuff. Almost every line in your piece is important and significant. So lay it out, bro.
Well, and there's much, much more. First of all, let me just give you the introduction to it, Frank. I was called by the attorneys in this case in June of 2004 because they'd read some of my stories about Iran and about Imad Mughniyeh, my interviews with Iranian defectors, and they asked me to conduct this investigation. So I'm actually the lead investigator.
Really?
In the case. I have written about it as a reporter very carefully, not to write about sealed material and to write basically just what is in the open material. But there's a great deal of material that we found out from these defectors from Iranian intelligence agencies who gave us sworn videotape testimony, depositions that are in sealed evidence that I can't yet talk about. But the bottom line really, the bottom line gets down to this. The Iranian regime, the Iranian government, from the very top, made a decision early on in the 1990s to work with Sunni terrorist groups. They're not just working with Shia terrorist groups, but with Sunni terrorist groups. And they reached out early on to an Egyptian named Ayman Zawahiri, who in fact was a very close friend of a gentleman named Osama bin Laden. And it was through Zawahiri that they had the contact with bin Laden starting in 1993. The first meeting that we detail in this court case is in Khartoum between an Iranian Rev Guards general, Imad Mughniyeh, their top terrorist, and Osama bin Laden, and it goes from there. That's what people don't realize. The Iran ties, the Iran-al-Qaeda ties, go back to the early 1990s. And, of course, they go through 9/11, and they continue right up until today, where we have the U.S. Treasury Department telling us quite officially on the record that Iran continues to shelter and harbor the top operative in al-Qaeda, the top military operations guy, is still in Iran.
Ken, off the air over the months that I've had you on, you've been telling me, oh, Frank, there's so much more I can't tell you. Dude, you never told me you were the lead investigative reporter in this case.
Well,
and it's like, oh my gosh, you're not just reporting on it, and of course this is like 10% or 1% of what you've got. And so far, let me just sort of give people the big picture here. There's a court case in federal court in New York. They're trying to find who's the responsible party behind Iran. It's brought a suit that is brought by families of the victims of 9/11. And there are 3 Iranian defectors that have come forward. And did you ever interview them, Ken?
Oh, absolutely.
Oh my gosh!
Located them. These were my Joes. These were my guys that I located. The first one came to me. It's a kind of interesting story. His story has been unsealed, so I can talk to you about this openly. His name is Abu Qasim Mizbahi. His name has never been cited before publicly in relation to this case, and he came to me roughly 2 weeks, 10 days to 2 weeks after 9/11.
Wow.
He said, I've got to tell you what happened. I had this information. I feel terrible. I tried to get this information to the German police and to the U.S. intelligence organizations to tell them what was going to happen. I had warning. I had messages which I received from former colleagues in Iranian intelligence before 9/11 that this was going to happen, and I tried to tell you, and I couldn't get the message across. I feel terrible. And I wrote a story about that, I think at the end of September of 2001 in Insight magazine, where I worked at the time with the Washington Times. And, you know, subsequent to that, I introduced him to the lawyers. We went to Europe on multiple occasions to brief him and ultimately to take videotape testimony from him. And it gets, there's much, much more.
Oh, Ken, this is so exciting. I had no idea. Like, you're the key player here. I want people to understand that.
Yeah, I actually conducted the investigation.
Yeah.
We were in Europe, as I say, many, many times doing these debriefings and doing the testimonies. At one particular occasion in Germany, we had 4 different hostile intelligence teams tag teaming us and following us, trying to find out the identity of our witnesses. They tried to surprise us in the hallways. We had a chase